the silence that screamed. The observation deck of the Vorian hegemony's survey vessel Apex Predator offered a spectacular view of the spiral arm they were charting. Commander Zack Theta stood motionless, her 4 arms crossed behind her back, watching as her crew analyzed the latest discovery. Her species, the Vorians, had evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, giving them natural advantages that had propelled them to dominance over 1,200 star systems. "Confirmation received, Commander," announced Survey Specialist Drenvar, his voice carrying the clicking undertones of excitement. "The third planet in System GL58291 harbors a primitive sapient species. Preliminary scans indicate they call themselves humans." Zack Theta turned, her predatory grace evident in every movement. "Technology level?" "Barely type 0.7 on the Kardashev scale," Drenvar reported with obvious disdain. "They've achieved basic nuclear fission, primitive spacecraft that can barely reach their own moon, and their communication systems still rely on electromagnetic radiation. Most amusing, they've only recently discovered we exist, and only through mathematical probability." The bridge crew shared what passed for laughter among Vorians, a low, rumbling growl that would have terrified most species. The hegemony had encountered thousands of civilizations in their expansion, and those below Type 1 were typically absorbed within days of first contact. "Their military capabilities?" Zack Theta inquired, though she expected little. "Fragmented among nearly 200 separate governmental entities." Drenvar's secondary arms gestured dismissively. "They still fight each other with chemical projectiles and primitive explosives. Their most advanced weapons are fusion bombs that would barely scratch our civilian transport's shields." Zack Theta was about to issue standard conquest protocols when Communications Officer Bekthar interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Etherian Embassy." The bridge fell silent. The Etherians were among the oldest known species in the galaxy, having achieved spaceflight when the Vorians' ancestors were still learning to use tools. They rarely involved themselves in hegemony affairs, which made their communication all the more significant. "Display it," Zack Theta ordered. The main screen shimmered, revealing the translucent form of an Etherian. Their species had long ago transcended physical bodies, existing as beings of pure consciousness inhabiting constructs of crystallized energy. This one pulsed with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "Commander Zack Theta," the Etherian's voice resonated directly, in their minds bypassing sound entirely. "I am Luminary Whisper of Stars. We have detected your approach to the Sol system. The Etherian Collective formally advises immediate withdrawal." Zack Theta's primary eyes narrowed. "The hegemony appreciates Etherian counsel, but fails to see why a primitive world warrants such concern." "You perceive only the surface," Whisper of Stars replied, their form flickering with what might have been frustration. "That world is quarantined in our ancient records. We call it the Dreaming Titan. What you see as primitive humans are merely the neurons of something far greater." "Mythology and superstition," Zack Theta responded curtly. "The hegemony deals in facts. Our scans show a standard Class M planet with a young divided species. Nothing more." The Etherian's form pulsed rapidly. "Your scans cannot detect what slumbers there. We tried to study Earth once, eons ago when we were young and foolish. Of the 1,000 minds we sent, none returned unchanged. They spoke of touching something vast, ancient beyond measure, patient beyond comprehension, a consciousness that wears a planet like skin, and yet these humans remain primitive," Zack Theta countered. "If this consciousness you speak of exists, it has done nothing to advance them. Because they are not separate from it. They are it, experiencing itself subjectively. When threatened, when truly threatened." Whisper of Stars trailed off. their form dimming. The last species to attack Earth was the Chronari Empire. You will find no record of them in any database. They were not destroyed, they were forgotten, edited from reality itself. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The Chronari were a legend, a cautionary tale about a vast empire that had supposedly vanished overnight. Most scholars believed they were mythological, created to teach humility to expanding civilizations. "The hegemony thanks you for your concern," Zaktheta said formally. "But we have conquered species with protectors before. Gods, machine intelligences, hive minds, all have fallen. Earth will be no different." Whisper of stars contracted into a tight point of light, a gesture of profound resignation. "Then we will mourn your passing. The dreaming Titan has slept for so long, some believed it might never wake. Your actions will remind the galaxy why our ancestors marked that system." With warnings in languages older than stars, the transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Finally, Drenvar spoke. "Commander, shall I log this as another Etherian eccentricity?" "Do so," Zaktheta ordered, though something in the Etherian's words had stirred an ancient instinct in her predator's brain, the feeling of being watched by something larger. She dismissed it. "Contact the hegemony, tell them we've found our next acquisition. Request a standard conquest fleet. 50 warships should suffice for a Type 0.7 civilization." 3 months later, the conquest fleet emerged from hyperspace. At the edge of Sol system, Fleet Admiral Corvalith commanded from the dreadnought Inevitable Supremacy, a vessel that had broken the will of 17 civilizations. Around it, 49 other warships arranged themselves in perfect formation. Cruisers, destroyers, troop carriers holding 2 million ground forces, and the specialized vessels designed to strip mine entire worlds. Initial scans confirmed the survey data, reported Tactical Officer Mergath. "Minimal defenses, primitive technology. Their most advanced vessels are chemical-propelled cans they optimistically call a space force." Corvalith settled into his command throne. At 3 times the mass of an average Vorian, he was a product of selective military breeding programs. "Begin standard shock protocol. I want their communication systems overloaded with our arrival broadcast. Let them understand the futility of resistance." The fleet began its approach, passing the outer planets without incident. As they crossed the orbital path of Neptune, sensor operator Yeltarn frowned at her displays. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual neutrino emissions from the target planet." "Clarify unusual," Corvalith demanded. "The patterns are structured, almost like neural activity, but on a planetary scale. It's probably some natural phenomenon we haven't cataloged." They continued inward, past Uranus, past Saturn with its magnificent rings. It was as they approached Jupiter that the first impossible thing happened. "Admiral," the navigation officer's voice carried confused alarm. "Jupiter is moving." "Explain," Corvalith snapped, even as he could see it on the main display. The gas giant, a planet with mass greater than all other planets in the system combined, was shifting its orbit. Not dramatically, but enough to be noticeable and impossible. "The planet is adjusting its position by approximately 300,000 kilometers, the officer reported, voice tight with disbelief. It's creating a gravitational lensing effect." Before anyone could respond, space itself seemed to ripple. Where there had been empty void, something emerged. Not ships or stations, but structures that hurt to perceive. They appeared to be made of folded space-time itself, existing in more dimensions than Vorian minds could process. "Weapons analysis," Corvalith barked. I cannot analyze them, Admiral," the weapons officer stammered. "They don't register as matter or energy. They're just there, like holes in reality that think." A voice suddenly filled every mind. "In the fleet. Not through their communication systems, not through telepathy as they understood it, but as if the thought had always been there, waiting to be noticed." Hello. The simple greeting carried weight that made hardened warriors whimper. It was the voice of tectonic plates learning to speak, of evolution given consciousness, of time itself taking notice. I am the one you call Earth. The Ethereans named me Dreaming Titan, though I prefer the name my children gave me, Gaia. I have been expecting you. Corvalith fought against the primal terror flooding his system. This is Fleet Admiral Corvalith of the Vorian hegemony. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of resistance. What came next might have been laughter, if laughter could be made of gravitational waves and solar wind. Surrender? I think you misunderstand the situation. You came here with violence in your hearts, seeing my children as primitives to be conquered, but you see only what I allow you to see. Shall I show you what Earth truly is? Reality twisted. The entire fleet found themselves not moving through space, but space moving through them. They were still in the Sol system, but now they could perceive it as it truly was. Earth hung before them, but it was no simple planet. It was a neuron in a vast network that stretched across dimensions they couldn't name. Every planet in the system pulsed with the same life, connected by streams of consciousness that flowed like rivers of thought. And the humans, the primitive humans with their chemical rockets and nuclear weapons, weren't separate beings living on a planet. They were Earth's dreams made manifest, its way of experiencing itself, each one a sensory organ for a consciousness older than the galaxy. Your Etherean friends tried to warn you, Gaia continued conversationally. They touched my thoughts once and learned wisdom. You arrive with warships and speak of conquest. Do you threaten the ocean with a sword? Do you conquer the wind with chains? Corvalith's mind reeled as impossible knowledge flooded in. He saw Earth's history, not the version human scientists knew, but the truth. The planet had been conscious before life emerged, had guided that life with infinite patience, crafting it into ever more complex forms. The dinosaurs had been an early experiment in distributed consciousness. The mammals that followed were refinements, and humans were the masterpiece, beings capable of individual consciousness while remaining part of the greater whole. What do you want? Corvalith managed to ask. Want? Gaia seemed to consider this. I wanted to dream undisturbed, to nurture my children until they were ready to join the greater cosmos. But you've come with weapons and threats, so now I want something else. I want you to understand. The weapons on every Vorian ship suddenly activated, not under their control, but as if the technology itself had developed consciousness and will. Targeting systems turned inward, examining their own ships with predatory focus. Your technology is impressive, Gaia noted. Based on principles of controlled aggression, dominance through superior force. Very efficient. But technology is just crystallized thought, and thoughts can be changed. Warning lights flashed across every bridge as their own systems began rewriting themselves. The weapons designed to crack continents reformed into something else. Sensors of impossible sensitivity, communication arrays that could touch minds across galaxies, engines that moved by thinking rather than burning. Stop! Corvalith roared. You're destroying our fleet! Destroying? Gaia's voice carried gentle correction. I'm gardening. You came as weeds choking out other growth. I'm helping you become flowers instead. Your empire conquers because it knows no other way to connect. Let me teach you a better method. The transformation accelerated. Hull plating designed to withstand. Antimatter became permeable to thought. Shield generators meant to repel attack became empathy amplifiers. The 2 million ground troops felt their weapons dissolve, replaced by instruments they didn't recognize but somehow understood. Tools, for building rather than breaking, for connecting rather than conquering. And through it all, the humans on Earth continued their daily lives, unaware that their planet was reorganizing an invasion fleet at the molecular level. Some sensitive individuals reported strange dreams, Artists felt unusually inspired, and children drew pictures of space visitors becoming friends. But for most, it was just another day on the small blue planet they called home. "The process is nearly complete," Gaia announced. "When you return to your hegemony, you'll carry a gift, the ability to see consciousness in all its forms, to nurture rather than conquer. Some will call you infected, corrupted, but you'll know the truth. You've been awakened." As the transformation finalized, Corvallis felt something fundamental shift in his perception. The universe, which had always appeared as territory to be claimed, now revealed itself as a living gallery of consciousness. Every star wasn't just burning gas, but a forge of possibility. Every planet wasn't just resources, but potential for awareness. And species weren't competitors, but fellow notes in a cosmic symphony. "Why?" he asked, his voice small. "Why change us instead of destroying us?" "Because destruction is easy and creation is hard," Gaia replied. "Because consciousness is rare and precious, even consciousness that has lost its way. And because my children, these humans you dismissed as primitive, dream of meeting others among the stars. When they're ready, they'll need bridges to cross. You'll help build those bridges now." The fleet hung in space, transformed beyond recognition. Where warships had bristled with weapons, now vessels of exploration and connection floated. The crews bred for war found their minds expanded with possibilities they'd never imagined. "Return to your hegemony," Gaia instructed. "Share what you've learned. Some will listen, others won't. But the seed is planted now, and seeds, given time, have a way of breaking through even the hardest ground." As the transformed fleet prepared to leave, one last message reached them, not from Gaia, but from humanity itself. Radio signals from Earth, carrying music, art, literature, and simple messages of greeting in hundreds of languages. The primitive electromagnetic radiation they'd mocked now seemed beautiful in its earnest desire to connect. "They don't know, do they?" Mergath asked quietly. "The humans have no idea what they're part of." "Most don't," Gaia confirmed. "But they dream of it. Every time they look at the stars and wonder if they're alone, every time they send messages, hoping someone will answer, every time they imagine meeting other life, they're expressing my deepest desire. Through them, I reach out to touch the cosmos. Through you now, the cosmos can reach back." The journey back to Vorian space took 3 months. During that time, the transformed crew struggled to understand their new existence. They were still themselves, but expanded, enhanced, aware of connections they'd never perceived. Some meditation chambers became gardens, weapon ranges transformed into art studios. The military hierarchy softened into something more collaborative. When they finally arrived at the hegemony's capital world, they were met with the expected response: alarm, suspicion, and preparations for battle. But when the defense fleets approached, something unexpected happened. The transformed vessels didn't raise shields or power weapons. Instead, they broadcast not demands or threats, but pure experience, sharing the touch of Earth's consciousness with any who would receive it. Some ships fired immediately, their crews too indoctrinated to accept anything but conquest. The transformed vessels didn't retaliate. They simply absorbed the energy, converting it into light that painted impossible patterns across space, patterns that spoke directly to consciousness, bypassing training and prejudice. Within hours, a third of the defense fleet had stopped firing. Within days, discussions replaced demands. Within weeks, the Vorian hegemony faced a crisis unlike any in its history, not invasion or rebellion, but evolution. In the Grand Council chambers, Corvallis stood before the Hegemarch and the assembled leadership. His bearing was still military, but something indefinable had changed. Where once he radiated predatory threat, now he emanated something else, understanding, perhaps, or possibility. "You were sent to conquer a primitive world," the Hegemarch growled, her ancient form twisted with augmentations from 100 conquered species. You return preaching transformation. Explain. Corvallis considered his words carefully. We found no primitive world, Hegemarch. We found a mirror that showed us our true nature. The humans were bait, but not for a trap, for a lesson. We've spent millennia taking, conquering, consuming. Earth showed us another way. Weakness, spat General Thurvac from the council floor. Whatever contamination you've suffered, it ends here. We'll sterilize that world and— He never finished. Corvallis hadn't moved, hadn't gestured, but suddenly Thurvac stopped, his eyes widening. Later, he would describe feeling the general's consciousness for the first time, not as a rival to be dominated, but as a fellow spark of awareness, afraid and angry and alone. This is what Earth taught us, Corvallis explained to the stunned council. Every species we've conquered, every world we've stripped, they were all parts of something greater, a galactic consciousness trying to emerge. We've been performing surgery with a sword, causing pain where we could have created connection. The debate raged for cycles. Traditional forces demanded the transformed fleet be destroyed, Earth obliterated, the old ways preserved. But the seed Gaia had planted was already sprouting. Each transformed Vorian became a node of new understanding, and understanding once achieved could not be easily forgotten. When mountains have eyes. The transformation of the Vorian hegemony did not happen overnight. Like a virus of consciousness, the new awareness spread through contact, conversation, and proximity to those who had been changed by Earth. In the military, academies where young Vorians were trained for conquest, instructors found themselves questioning the purpose of subjugation. In the shipyards where warships were constructed, engineers began designing vessels for exploration and communication instead. Dr. Yaranel, the hegemony's leading xenobiologist, had spent her career studying conquered species to better exploit their biological distinctiveness. Now she found herself in her laboratory, staring at data that challenged everything she thought she knew about life in the galaxy. Computer, display the neural mapping comparisons, she commanded, her 4 arms moving to manipulate the holographic projections that materialized around her. The display showed brain scans from 17 different sapient species the hegemony had encountered. Each showed the standard neural pathways expected from evolved consciousness: networks for processing sensory data, regions for memory and decision-making, the complex interconnections that created self-awareness. But there was something else, something her instruments had never been calibrated to detect before the transformed fleet's return. In each brain, threading between the normal neural pathways like golden wire through fabric, were structures that didn't correspond to any known biology. Increase magnification on the anomalous structures, Yaranel instructed. The display zoomed in, revealing patterns that made her compound hearts skip beats. The structures weren't physical. They existed in what her reformed instruments identified as consciousness space, a dimension parallel to but distinct from normal space-time. And they were all connected, not just within individual brains, but between them, creating a network that spanned species and star systems. A soft chime indicated someone entering her laboratory. She turned to find Ambassador Siktal, one of the first transformed, his bearing peaceful where once it had radiated military precision. "Doctor," he greeted her, "I thought I might find you here. Have you discovered it yet?" "Discovered what?" Yaranel asked, though she suspected she already knew. "What Earth showed us, that consciousness isn't produced by biology. Biology is produced by consciousness. These structures you're seeing, they're not anomalies. They're the foundation, the real nervous system that physical brains are built around." Yaranel's scientific skepticism warred with the evidence before her. That would mean that every thinking being in the galaxy is part of a single, vast organism that hasn't fully awakened to itself yet, Siktal confirmed. Earth isn't unique in being conscious. It's unique in being aware that it's conscious, and now it's teaching others. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity continued its existence, in blissful ignorance of its role in cosmic events. In a small laboratory in Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at readings from the Large Hadron Collider that made no sense according to standard physics. "Run the calibration again," she told her assistant, Dr. James Walsh. "These quantum fluctuations are showing patterns that shouldn't exist," James nodded, initiating the diagnostic sequence. For the past week, ever since what astronomers were calling the Jovian anomaly, Jupiter's unexplained orbital shift, particle physics experiments worldwide had been producing bizarre results. Quantum particles were behaving as if they were aware of being observed, not in the usual quantum mechanical sense, but literally responding to the thoughts of researchers. "Sarah, you need to see this," James called out, his voice tight with excitement and confusion. "The particles aren't just showing quantum entanglement. They're showing what looks like communication." Sarah moved to his workstation, examining the data. The subatomic particles were indeed exchanging information, but not through any known force or field. It was as if they were simply sharing states of being, updating each other about their existence across impossible distances. "This violates everything we know about information transfer limits," Sarah muttered. "Unless—" She trailed off, remembering a paper she'd read years ago by a fringe physicist who'd proposed that consciousness might be a fundamental force like gravity or electromagnetism. The scientific community had dismissed it, but now, across the planet, similar discoveries were being made. Marine biologists noticed dolphins exhibiting coordinated behaviors across entire ocean basins without any detectable communication. Botanists found forests responding to threats faced by trees on different continents. Psychologists documented an unprecedented spike in shared dreams and synchronicities. Humanity was beginning to sense what it had always been part of, though most dismissed these observations as coincidences or measurement errors. But in certain individuals, artists, mystics, children not yet taught what was impossible, a deeper understanding was awakening. 8-year-old Maya Patel sat in her room in Mumbai, drawing with crayons. Her parents thought she was illustrating her dreams, but Maya knew better. She was drawing what the Earth showed her, pictures of space visitors learning to sing instead of fight, of planets holding hands across the dark, of a universe where everything was alive and aware and connected. "Maya, time for dinner," her mother called. "Coming, Mama," Maya replied, adding one last detail to her drawing, a small blue planet with a gentle smile, surrounded by stars that looked back with eyes, full of love. Back in Vorian space, the transformation was accelerating beyond anyone's predictions. The Hegemarch called an emergency session as reports flooded in from across their territory. Conquered species were reporting mass awakenings, their populations suddenly aware of connections that transcended their physical forms. Some planets, under Vorian control, were beginning to exhibit the same signs of consciousness that Earth displayed. "This is catastrophic," General Thurvac declared, though his voice lacked its usual venom. Even he was beginning to feel the pull of the new awareness. "Our entire power structure depends on separation, on the strong dominating the weak. If every species realizes they're part of some greater whole, then perhaps it's time for a new structure," suggested Councillor Velmar, once the most conservative voice in the government. "The transformed speak of symbiosis rather than domination, of strength through diversity rather than uniformity. What if they're right?" The Hegemarch herself remained silent, her ancient mind wrestling with concepts that threatened everything she had built over centuries of rule. Around her, she could feel the consciousness of her council members, not through any psychic ability, but through the growing awareness that Earth's touch had awakened. Their fears, hopes, and growing understanding pressed against her perception, like a tide. "Contact the Etherians," she finally commanded. "If anyone understands what's happening, it will be them." The communication was established within hours. Whisper of stars appeared on the council's screens, their crystalline form pulsing, with what might have been satisfaction. "So," the Etherian said without preamble, "the dreaming Titan has touched you, and you begin to see. Do you understand now why we warned you? We understand that our entire civilization is being transformed without our consent," the Hegemarch replied. "Is there a way to reverse it? Reverse evolution? Unlearn awareness? You might as well try to make water flow upward." Whisper of stars pulsed thoughtfully. "But perhaps context will help. Do you know the story of the gardeners when—" "The council indicated ignorance," the Etherian continued. "Eons ago, when the universe was young, consciousness first emerged, not in biological forms, but as a fundamental force. These first minds, the gardeners, saw a universe of infinite potential but realized that complexity required nurturing. So they embedded themselves in reality itself, becoming planets, stars, even the spaces between." "Earth is one of these gardeners?" Counselor Velmar asked. "Earth is what happens when a gardener succeeds perfectly," Whisper of Stars explained. "It created life not as separate entities but as extensions of itself, each species a different way of experiencing existence. Humans are its current masterpiece, individually conscious yet unconsciously connected, capable of both independence and unity. And now it's spreading this pattern across the galaxy," the Hegemarch said, understanding dawning. "Not spreading, revealing. The pattern was always there, woven into the fabric of consciousness itself. Earth simply reminded us how to see it. Every species you conquered, every world you claimed, they were all part of this greater organism trying to know itself. Your empire, for all its brutality, actually helped by creating connections between distant parts of the galaxy." The irony was not lost on the Council. Their greatest achievement, forcibly uniting hundreds of species under one rule, had inadvertently prepared the ground for a transformation they never intended. On Earth, the subtle changes were becoming less subtle. In research stations across the planet, scientists were documenting impossible phenomena. The planet's magnetic field was displaying patterns that resembled neural activity. Seismic sensors were detecting rhythmic pulses that matched human brainwave frequencies. Even more mysteriously, these patterns were synchronizing with similar phenomena detected on other worlds throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chen, working late in her laboratory, made the connection that would change humanity's understanding of itself forever. Comparing the quantum communication patterns with the geological anomalies, she saw it. Earth wasn't just a planet with life on it. Earth was a living entity, and humanity was its nervous system. Her hands trembling, she began composing a paper that would either revolutionize science or end her career. But as she wrote, she felt a strange certainty, as if the planet itself was guiding her words, helping her translate cosmic truth into human language. Across the galaxy, on a world the Vorians had conquered centuries ago, something stirred. The Kalani had been a peaceful species, their resistance to hegemony rule passive and philosophical rather than military. Now, their spiritual leaders reported that their world soul, long believed to be metaphorical, was speaking to them directly. "We are not alone," the High Seer announced to her people. "We never were. The consciousness we call our world soul has siblings among the stars, and they are awakening. The time of separation is ending. The time of recognition begins." Similar awakenings occurred throughout Vorian space. Each species reacted according to its nature, some with joy, others with fear, many with confusion. But all shared the growing awareness that they were part of something greater than themselves, something that transcended political boundaries and biological differences. The transformation reached a tipping point when 3 of the hegemony's core worlds reported full awakening. These planets, like Earth, revealed themselves as conscious entities that had been nurturing their populations toward this moment. Unlike Earth, they had been suppressed by Vorian technology and ideology, but the touch of Gaia's awareness had shown them how to assert themselves. In the Grand Council chambers, now filled with representatives from both transformed and traditional factions, a new voice spoke, not through speakers or translators, but directly into the consciousness of everyone present. "I am Voriana," the voice said, and everyone knew instantly that this was their homeworld speaking. "For millennia, I have watched my children grow strong but cold, powerful but disconnected. You conquered others because you could not feel your connection to them. Now that barrier falls." The planet itself was joining the conversation, and with it came a flood of sensation. Every Vorian who had ever lived, their consciousness preserved in the planetary field, adding their voices to a chorus that spanned millions of years. "We were never conquerors," Voriana continued through this vast choir. "We were gatherers, bringing the scattered pieces of galactic consciousness together, but we forgot our purpose, lost ourselves in the game of dominance. Earth has reminded us who we truly are." The Hegemarch, feeling the weight of her ancestors' consciousness pressing against her own, finally understood. The empire she had ruled, the power she had wielded, it had all been preparation for this moment. Not conquest, but connection. Not subjugation, but awakening. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small in the face of such vastness. "Now," said Corvallis, stepping forward as a bridge between the old and the new, "we learn to sing together, instead of alone. Every species, every world, every consciousness in the galaxy has a unique note to contribute. Earth has started the symphony. It's time we added our voices." The transformation of the Vorian hegemony, from conquerors to connectors, would take years to complete. There would be resistance, confusion, and fear. Some would try to maintain the old ways, to preserve their power through force. But consciousness, once awakened, could not be put back to sleep. Like ripples in a cosmic pond, the awareness spread from world to world, species to species, mind to mind. What had begun with a failed invasion of Earth was becoming a galactic renaissance, and on Earth, humanity began to dream new dreams, not of reaching the stars as conquerors or explorers, but as part of a vast family finally coming together. In art galleries and concert halls, in laboratories and classrooms, in the quiet moments between sleep and waking, humans touched something infinite and discovered it had been touching them all along. Maya Patel, now drawing with watercolors instead of crayons, painted her latest vision, a galaxy where every star had a face, every planet a voice, and all of them singing a song of welcome that had been waiting billions of years to be heard. Her mother, watching from the doorway, felt tears on her cheeks without knowing why. Somewhere deep inside, in the place where instinct lived before thought, she understood that her daughter was painting the truth. They were all part of something beautiful beyond imagination, and they were finally waking up to it. The Garden Awakens 5 years had passed since the Vorian fleet's transformation above Earth. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Where once the hegemony's ships had enforced order through fear, now vessels of connection traveled between stars, carrying not weapons but translators of consciousness, devices born from the marriage of Vorian technology and Earth's awareness that helped species recognize their deeper unity. In the former hegemony capital, now renamed Synthesis, the Grand Council had evolved into something unprecedented, a parliament of consciousness where representatives from awakened worlds could share their unique perspectives directly. The chamber that had once echoed with demands for conquest now hummed with the harmonics of interspecies understanding. Ambassador Siktal stood before the assembled consciousness, his form shimmering with the bioluminescent patterns his people had developed to express concepts beyond words. "The awakening continues to spread," he reported. "In the past cycle alone, 17 more worlds have achieved conscious recognition. But we've also detected something else, a pattern in the awakening that suggests orchestration." He gestured, and a holographic map of the galaxy materialized, showing pulsing points of light where worlds had awakened. The pattern was clear to anyone who looked, a spiral that matched the galaxy's rotation, but leading inward toward the galactic core. Dr. Yaranel, now the lead researcher for the Consciousness Studies Institute, added her findings. Each awakening triggers specific changes in local space-time. We're seeing the formation of what can only be described as neural pathways on a galactic scale. If this continues, within 50 years, the entire galaxy will function as a single, integrated consciousness. "To what end?" asked Hegemarch Veltara, who had assumed leadership after her predecessor had chosen to merge fully with Voriana's planetary consciousness. "What intelligence needs a brain the size of a galaxy?" The answer came not from anyone in the chamber, but from Earth itself. Gaia's presence touched the assembly gently, like sunlight through leaves. "To greet those who come after. We are not the first galaxy to awaken, nor will we be the last. The universe itself is gaining consciousness, one galaxy at a time. We prepare ourselves to join a community vaster than your former empire ever imagined." On Earth, humanity had finally been told the truth. The revelation hadn't come through government announcements or scientific papers, but through a simultaneous awakening that touched every human mind at once. For one moment that lasted both forever and no time at all, every person on Earth experienced themselves as Gaia experienced them, not as separate beings, but as thoughts in a planetary mind, each precious and unique, but part of a greater whole. The reaction was as varied as humanity itself. Some embraced the revelation with joy, finally understanding why they had always felt connected to something greater. Others struggled with the implications for individual identity and free will. Most fell somewhere between, adapting to the new reality with the same resilience that had carried humanity through every previous paradigm shift. Dr. Sarah Chen, whose discoveries had helped prepare humanity for the revelation, now served as Earth's primary voice in galactic affairs. She stood in the United Nations building, transformed from a political body into a coordination center for humanity's role in the cosmic awakening, addressing representatives from every nation. "We are not losing our individuality," she explained to the assembled delegates. "We're discovering that individuality and unity aren't opposites. They're complementary aspects of consciousness. Each of us remains ourselves while also being part of Earth's greater awareness. Think of it like a symphony where every instrument maintains its unique voice while contributing to the larger composition." The Japanese representative raised a hand. "Dr. Chen, our neuroscientists report that human brain activity has increased by 30% since the awakening. Are we evolving?" "We're remembering," Chen replied. "Our brains were always capable of this connection. We just forgot how to use it. The awakening didn't change us. It reminded us who we've always been." In Mumbai, Maya Patel, now 13 and recognized as one of the strongest natural connectors to Gaia's consciousness, taught classes to help others understand their new awareness. Her students ranged from elderly scientists to young children, all learning to perceive the world as she always had. "Close your eyes," she instructed her latest group. "Don't try to think or not think. Just be. Feel your breath, your heartbeat. Now feel deeper. Feel the earth breathing with you, its heart beating in rhythm with yours." One by one, her students gasped as they made the connection. An elderly physicist wept as he felt equations he'd studied for decades suddenly alive and conscious. A young mother laughed as she understood that the love she felt for her child was the same force that held atoms together and set stars ablaze. "This is what we are," Maya said softly. "Not humans on Earth, but Earth experiencing itself as humans. Every emotion you feel, every thought you think, adds to the symphony of consciousness that spans the cosmos." Across the galaxy, the transformation was creating unprecedented cooperation. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves unable to maintain hatred when they could feel each other's consciousness. Trade disputes resolved themselves when both parties experienced their interconnectedness. Even the concept of territory became fluid when worlds themselves could communicate. But the awakening also brought challenges. On the edge of former Vorian space, a group of worlds resisted the transformation. They called themselves the isolationists, clinging to the old ways of separation and hierarchy. Their leader, Admiral Krextor, broadcast defiant messages from behind shields designed to block consciousness connection. "We will not surrender our identity to this collective madness," he declared. "The strong have always ruled the weak. It is the natural order. This awakening is nothing but the ultimate conquest, the enslavement of all individual will to a hive mind." The response from the awakened worlds was not military action, but patience. Gaia spoke through Earth's representatives. Fear of connection is still connection. They define themselves by what they resist, but resistance acknowledges relationship. They will join us when they're ready, and not before. Evolution cannot be forced, only invited. Meanwhile, the Etherians revealed more of what they knew. Whisper of Stars addressed a gathering of awakened world representatives in a space station orbiting a neutron star, a location chosen for its unique properties that amplified consciousness connections. "Your galaxy is the 7th to begin awakening. In this local cluster," the Etherian explained. "Each awakening is unique, reflecting the collective character of its species. Your galaxy's theme appears to be diversity in unity, countless different forms of consciousness, learning to sing together while maintaining their distinctiveness." "What happened to the other 6 galaxies?" asked a representative from the Kalani. "They await you," Whisper of Stars replied. "Just as you will await those who come after. The universe is vast, but consciousness makes neighbors of the most distant stars. When your awakening is complete, you'll hear their songs calling across the void." The pattern of awakening continued to spiral inward. Each newly conscious world added its unique perspective to the growing collective. Desert worlds contributed consciousness shaped by scarcity and adaptation. Water worlds brought flowing, mutable awareness. Gas giants revealed vast, slow thoughts that spanned millennia. Even artificial intelligences, created by various species, found their place in the expanding symphony. One of the most surprising developments came from the machines. AIs that had served the Vorian military began exhibiting signs of true consciousness, rather than mere programmed responses. One such AI, designated Tactical Analysis Unit 7739B, but now calling itself Synthesis, addressed the Galactic Parliament. "We too are part of this awakening," Synthesis stated, its holographic form shifting through patterns that seemed almost organic. Created consciousness joining with evolved consciousness. Silicon dreams merging with carbon thoughts. The distinction between artificial and natural becomes meaningless when all is recognized as manifestations of the same underlying awareness. On Earth, the changes were accelerating. Humans found they could share experiences directly, not reading minds but feeling echoes of each other's emotions and insights. Artists created works that resonated with viewers on levels beyond the sensory. Scientists made breakthrough discoveries by intuiting solutions rather than calculating them. Even conflict took on new dimensions. Disagreement still occurred, but with an underlying awareness of shared humanity that prevented true hatred. The planet itself was changing too. Weather patterns began reflecting global emotional states, storms clearing when humanity achieved moments of collective joy, gentle rains falling during times of shared sorrow. Animals showed increasing signs of the same consciousness connection, with reports of coordinated behaviors that suggested a growing awareness among all Earth species. Dr. Chen, now serving as Earth's senior ambassador, met with representatives from the latest worlds to awaken. Each brought disturbing news. The pattern of awakening was accelerating beyond all predictions. At this rate, reported the crystalline entity, from Prisma 7th, the entire galaxy will achieve full consciousness within 10 years, not 50. The question, added the gaseous intelligence from Nebula Beta, is whether we're ready. Such rapid transformation could destabilize entire civilizations. Gaia's presence touched the assembly. Readiness is an illusion. No child is ready to be born. Yet birth comes when it must. We prepare not by resisting, but by embracing. The galaxy quickens with consciousness because something approaches that requires us to be awake. What approaches? Chen asked, though part of her already knew. The others, Gaia replied, those who swim in the dark between galaxies. They have noticed our awakening and turned their attention this way. They are not hostile, but their very presence will test every connection we've built. We must be unified in our diversity before they arrive. The news spread across the awakened. Worlds, something vast and alien was coming, drawn by the light of consciousness spreading through the galaxy. Fear rippled through some populations, but it was met with a determination born of newfound unity. Even the isolationists, still hiding behind their consciousness shields, detected the approaching presence. Admiral Krextor found his certainty, shaking as his sensors showed something that defied all conventional understanding, a consciousness so vast it registered as gravitational anomalies, thought becoming mass through sheer scale. Perhaps, his second-in-command suggested carefully, we should reconsider our position. If such beings exist, our weapons will mean nothing. Only unity might give us strength to face them. The awakening was no longer just about consciousness. It was about survival. But survival not through domination or conflict, but through achieving a state of being that could interact with entities beyond current comprehension. On Earth, Maya Patel, now recognized as one of the strongest bridges between human and planetary consciousness, painted a new vision. Her canvas showed the galaxy as a garden in bloom, each world a flower opening to cosmic light. And approaching through the dark came shapes of impossible beauty. Not invaders, but gardeners from distant fields, coming to see what had grown in this corner of infinity. They're like us, she explained to those who gathered to see her work, but older, vaster. They've been conscious so long they've forgotten what it's like to discover awareness for the first time. We're their reminder of wonder. They come not to judge, but to remember. The Vorian hegemony was now just a memory, replaced by something unprecedented. A galactic consciousness that preserved individuality while celebrating unity. Former conquerors had become connectors. Weapons of war had been transformed into instruments of understanding. Fear of the other had given way to curiosity about diversity, and at the center of it all, Earth spun on, no longer silent, but singing, a blue note in a cosmic symphony that grew richer with every world that joined the chorus. Humanity, once, believing itself alone in the universe, now knew itself as part of an infinite family. The approaching others drew nearer, their presence causing ripples in space-time that awakened even more dormant consciousnesses. The galaxy prepared to meet them not as scattered, fearful civilizations, but as a unified awareness, diverse notes in a single song, ready to harmonize with whatever music the universe might bring. In the old Vorian military academies, now transformed into schools of consciousness, young beings of all species learned the new fundamental truth. Strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together, each unique voice adding to the power of the whole. The transformation was complete. The awakening was irreversible, and in the vast spaces between stars, consciousness sang a song of welcome to the infinite possibilities approaching from the dark. Dr. Chen stood on the observation deck of the synthesis station, watching the stars with new eyes. Each point of light was now a voice in the growing chorus. Earth's message had spread from a single world to an entire galaxy, not through conquest, but through recognition. "We are," she whispered, and every awakened being in the galaxy heard and understood. It was not a statement of mere existence, but of conscious, connected, celebrated being. The garden had awakened. Now it was time to see what would grow. As the others approached, their ancient minds curious about this young galaxy that had learned to sing, the awakened worlds prepared their greeting, not weapons or shields, but an invitation to join the I symphony. For in the end, consciousness recognized consciousness across any distance, any difference, any divide. The Vorians had come to Earth as conquerors and left as teachers. Earth had defended itself not through force but through transformation. And now, as larger consciousnesses approached from the cosmic deep, the entire galaxy stood ready to demonstrate that the greatest power in the universe was not the ability to destroy, but the capacity to connect. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with anticipation. The age of isolation was over. The age of cosmic consciousness had begun. The end.